Welcome to a closer look here in the Creepy Crawler's garage. And we've actually got two builds we're going to be looking at this time. We were working on both of these in the previous episode of the RC shop. We've got the Gremlin build, and then we've got the Samurai project over there. And I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and dive in first and take a closer look at the Gremlin build. So I went ahead and took the body off of the chassis and kind of moved it out of the way, and took the hood off also, got it out of the way, because we just want to look at what it is that we were working on in the last episode of the RC shop, and that's just this part of the body. In fact, the first part we started with was cutting out all these mounting tabs that were inside of this body shell. There was I'd say probably 8 or 10 from 2-inch to 3-inch mounting tabs inside this body that mounted the body on, and then other parts that were inside the body also mounted to these tabs. And we don't need them, so that's not how we're going to mount the body, and we're not using any of that stuff. We're going to build our own interior. So we needed to get rid of them. That's what we did. And it was pretty straightforward. Basically just used a cutoff wheel and then a grinding wheel, and then hand sanded from there. And it left it pretty rough, and you can still see these mold lines and the sanding marks, and that's okay. That's not going to be a problem, because in the end, when we build an interior for this body or for this truck, it's going to include a headliner, which is going to cover everything you see here, so you're not going to see it, including these tabs that we glued in. So not only did, of course, were there mounting tabs, but there were holes to access those screws that mounted the body, and also holes back here that a rear spoiler mounted on that we're not needing. We need to smooth those out. So what I needed to do was glue in some backing plates, I guess you could call them, to give some surface area for this body filler to adhere to. You could put that body filler in without these backing plates. You could goop it in there. It would squish out the backside, and you'd get it to work eventually. But what's going to happen is you're only going to get adherence of the body filler to just these edges around the holes. And without these backing plates giving more surface area for that body filler to adhere to, you run a lower risk when this body filler starts to harden, of it cracking or falling out, or in the future that happening. So when this truck gets used and it bounces around, bangs around, there's less of a chance of that body filler plug just plain popping out. Now I also added some indicator light lenses, or some indicator lights to the front of the fenders. Basically this body, let me show you here. Basically this body has silk screened indicators up front here. You can see they're just silk screened or painted on there, I guess, probably. These obviously don't work. They're just cosmetic. But with this ultra scale build, I want indicator lights that work. So I actually have had some laying around the shop. So I took the lens and molded it into the front fender. Pretty straightforward. Just here, you can see on this side, I used a couple starter holes here, made a couple starter holes that the lens itself would mount into. That way I could trace out the outline of the lens. Then I drilled those holes out a little bigger, and then I was able to use some files, like I have this round file, and I was able to work those drilled holes together. So I could just file it down to where I had one long oval of a hole, and then I could use some flat files to slowly work it out to the shape of the indicator. Now, while I'm doing that the whole time, I'm testing to see if that lens fits snugly like it does now. And so once I got a snug fit, I stopped. I don't want to file it out too big. And now, so I've got a nice tight friction fit for this lens. Now, it's also going to mount to the backing plate. So I've got a nice tight friction fit. I'll also be mounting these mounts on the inside of the fender that the lens will mount to also. So we get a nice solid mount for these indicator lights. And of course, these will also be painted yellow in the future. That will give us a working side markers or indicator lights when we put a light kit in this, which will be pretty cool. So we'll have working turn signals and everything else, making it much more of a scale build. And then the main project we actually worked on, or at least the most time-consuming project we worked on, was reshaping the fender well cutouts and adding these new flares to them. So here, let me flip it around again. So basically, these front fenders, for example, are too small. So the tires we're using are too big for these fender cutouts, and they would rub. And what's interesting in the back is they're way too big and really oddly placed. They're way too far forward. So basically, this car. Let me see if I can back up the camera just a little bit here, so you can see better. There we go. Basically, this body was kind of comical looking. It had big tires, big wheels. The body itself. It's not bad, but it was just the wheels and tire combo. So, and for that wheel and tire combo, they needed these real funky fender cutouts. So we got to change these for what we're doing, because we're trying to make a scale-looking Gremlin truck, or what we're calling the Grinch build. So we needed to change these and make our own shapes. And so what I did, the easiest way to do it was, first process, let me get where you can see these fender flares here, we removed those. We removed these fender flares. So I had to cut them off, just with a cutoff wheel, cut them off and sand everything flat. And then I made my own fender flares. So I just modeled these in my 3D software and then 3D printed them. And then I was able to mount these back on here to work from. This gives me, you could say, like a skeleton to work from. And what happened when I cut these out, so I have, what was kind of nice is because this is silver, I had a line to cut to. So I basically just cut, ground, and sand to that line, and it gave me that flat surface. And when we mounted these, we have a big hole or a big gap here. You can kind of see where the silver is. That would actually not be there anymore. So we had a big hole there. So I had to basically do, and you can see back here, kind of the same thing we did with the holes here. I had to glue in a backing plate, as you can see on this side. I had to glue in a backing plate, so when I body filled there, again, I had a surface to adhere to, and it keeps the body filler thinner. You don't want big, thick chunks of body filler. The thicker your body filler gets, the more likely it's going to break and chip in the future. So you want to keep it thin, and by doing this, that gives me a better surface and a thinner surface to add the body filler to. And then, of course, from there, it's just a matter. What I mainly did is it's a matter of sanding it down. And what I mainly did is did it by hand. So I used my finger. So when I applied the filler, I really just kind of filled it in. I use spot filler, so it's easy to sand, really filled it in. And then I used my finger and my thumb and hand sanded it until I got a nice, smooth, feathered fender flare that molds into the fender. And so it's a long process. So I would obviously put a coat and then sand it down, and then put another coat and then sand it down. And I just worked it until I got that nice, smooth surface. And the one other thing I would say is you want to try to, as little, just work one spot. You want to try to work the whole arch, or at least a half at a time. You want to keep your strokes as long as possible. That way you keep everything as smooth as possible. And then from there, I had to just cut out what was left on the inside of the fender, which I just did with a sanding drum. And then I again filled in with some body filler inside here, because you had some gaps and whatnot. So we just body filled and did the same thing, hand sanded on the inside till it was nice and smooth. And I think the finished result turned out pretty good. In fact, I really like the shape of that cutout, and I like the shape of that flare. I definitely like it a lot better than the original. Definitely looks much better, I think, at least. You can let me know what you think down below. But I think it turned out pretty well. Now I just have to do the back two fenders and, of course, the front fender. And the back fender is going to be a lot more work, because this cutout's way too far forward. So this fender flare is going to go somewhere way up here. So I'm going to have a big plate back here, and then I'm going to have to really do a lot of filling, and I'll probably use some styrene to fill, because we're going to have a big cutout up front. I'm going to have to use probably some styrene and filler to fill that in and move the whole fender cutout back. And of course, to do that, we'll put the body on the chassis and find the center line of the axle, and then we'll mount this or create our new cutout off that center line. But I've got to do the back two fenders and, of course, this fender here. And what I thought about doing, what I'm probably going to do is, for this Tuesday, I'm going to do a how-to. So I'll do a more in-detailed, I'll probably either do the front or maybe one of the backs, since it's going to be even more complicated. I'll do a how-to video. So I'll go step by step so you can see me actually make the measurements, glue it up, put the backing in, the whole process, how I sand it, how I get to the final product. I think I'll do that for a video this Tuesday. Probably be part of the RC Basics series that I do, basically how to create your own fender cutout, something titled like that. So if that's something you're interested in watching, make sure and look for that to come this Tuesday. I'll have it out. And the other project we've been working on, or at least Frank's been working on, is the Samurai project. And this is the Proline Suma body that's on the Pimpin' Crawler's chassis. And basically, if you remember right, we had basically it looks like this before. It's just we didn't have a 4-link setup on it yet. And that's what Frank was working on in that last episode of the RC shop, was building out the 4-link. So this is a very short wheelbase. So we're going to just build our own links for it. And basically what I went out and did is I got him some round stock to use to build links from. And I got 2 different style round stock. I'm not sure what OD, I can't remember. I have to go back and look what OD this is. But I got him one with an ID of 3 millimeters. This is to tap 4 millimeter threads into. And then I also got him some stock that is ID 4 millimeter. And this is so if we needed to make any spacers or something like that where we didn't need it threaded, we could use this round stock. And so basically what he did is just threaded out the ends of the 3 mil ID stuff so that we could put these basically it's a M4 thread so that we could put these axial link ends on. And he was able to get 2.5 of them done before he snapped my only M4 tap. So that kind of put an end to moving forward with the 4-link setup, but luckily I actually have a 6x6 that we're going to be working on in a different series. So here on the channel, the behind the scenes series, we'll be working on it. So I stole some of the links off of it and we made them work he made them work so we could get it set up and see if his math essentially worked on his link lengths, which I think is pretty good. I think they're pretty close. We'll probably end up shortening these bottom links on the back just a little bit. We made the ones that we have, we made them as short as we could. And it's still not, I don't think it doesn't quite have the back axle far enough forward. But that's no problem when we make our own links. I can measure that link we have there. It makes it, actually using these makes it real easy to measure exactly what link you're gonna need when you go to make your own. But otherwise, I think it turned out pretty well. Also, he went ahead, I loaned him, this is one of the drive shafts off that 6x6 also, which fits perfect. I had another one, I'm not sure, here it is. We also had this shaft that we tried putting up front, but it's just too long. So I think what I'm gonna do is just go over to Axial and buy 2 of these links. Or 2 of these drive shafts, and I think they'll work both front and back. I think that'll be perfect. And then we'll should have a nice running Samurai project. But anyways, guys, that's a closer look at the 2 projects we've got going on right now. If these are projects you want to keep up with in the RC shop episodes, or you want to check out other series and other episodes coming up, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.